What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode with the Power of a Growth Mindset. We are joined with Miss Hady Mendez today. There's a lot that I can talk about with Hady today, but the biggest thing and the one thing that I would describe her is a leader. She's had a pretty illustrious 25 years doing a number of different things in the industry, but she's had different leadership roles from head of equality at a major tech firm. She's been on multiple boards, such as Room to Grow, Pan Peru USA, and Information, which we will talk more about today. But also in her free time, she's an avid amateur street photographer and also an avid podcast listener. But today, Hady, you are on our show. So we are very excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mike. Hello, audience. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today. Yeah, thank you for the funny introduction. That word illustrious. I don't think I've ever heard that word to describe my career. That was an
Come on now. Come on
interesting
now.
choice of words.
Look, we're gonna hype you up and give you your flowers. Because I
Thank you.
know for the time that I've known you, just some of the work that you've been doing has been one. I'm very motivated by it. And of course, like I said, we'll talk more into details with what's been going on with your career. But as we start off the show today, one of the things that Mike and I love to do is we like to do a mental health check-in. And there's a lot going on in the world, but really what we want to do is get a pulse check with how you were doing. I know you've been doing some traveling. I've seen some of the photos on LinkedIn, so I've been very, I'm like, I need to go do this. But of course, we want to start this off with getting a feel for how you're doing.
Yeah, so good question to start off with. I'm doing okay. I would say that I am feeling a little bit stressed because I guess we'll get into this more, I'm hoping today, but I actually got laid off a couple months ago. So I'm a little bit stressed out because I'm looking for work and I'm dealing with rejections, and that's not easy. So that's one aspect of my, I guess, myself that I'm struggling with. And there's a lot on my plate. I actually also decided to start a small business during this time to kind of sustain me and kind of keep me busy and make me feel like I'm still really contributing and moving the needle. And that also brings with it some stress and angst as I navigate like the small business. I don't know, like what that process is like. It's, you got to like deal with lawyers and accountants and stuff like that. And I get really nervous that I might do something wrong. So anyway, that's been stressful. But I've been just very busy. So I've been busy like studying for an exam and doing the side business and looking for work and networking and traveling and going to conferences. So like it's been a lot of things. So I do feel like I want to start feeling more grounded. And physically, though, I feel like I'm in some of the best shape of my life. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. Mostly because I've been cooking for myself and I've been keeping a really good diet that I know is like good for me. And that part has been going well. So I'm hoping that I can lean a little bit more on that feeling physically well to also help manage some of the other aspects of myself. But I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking.
For sure. Now, we want to dive a little bit into your story. And I know OG New Yorker. And as we look at all the things that you're involved in, like you said, you have a small business, you're traveling, you've had different leadership roles. We want to start off with, where did it's, you've got a lot of passions, like where did the drive come from? Like where was that instilled? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm glad I'm on this show because I feel like a growth mindset has something to do with what kind of keeps me motivated.
Yep.
But as I think about like where I am, the stage or the season that I'm in my life right now, I feel that I still have a lot that I can contribute and grow. A lot of ways that I can still grow and a lot of ways that I can still contribute. I firmly believe that. Like, I don't feel like I'm like, well, my job's done here. see ya. Like, I still feel that I have a lot that I have to do. There's still a lot of work to be done, and I can be doing it. So, um, where the drive comes from is just knowing that, yeah, I think that there's work to be done, that I am in a position, a unique position as a woman of color, as a Latina, to contribute to that conversation, to try and make a change, to be in positions of power and influence that I can try and really make an impact. And, when I think about my current situation, I firmly believe it is not a permanent situation. I know that I'm going to look back at this time and I'm going to say, it paid off, that I believe, that I was like positive, that I believed in myself, that I wasn't afraid to put myself out there. Um, I believe that, to the degree that I'm putting myself out there, I'm going to get closer to the next opportunity that's out there for me. So having a really positive growth mindset is a big part of what helps me to achieve my goals, and to, yeah, to just, I don't know, thrive when it doesn't seem like it's a good situation to be thriving. I'm still trying to be someone who's thriving nonetheless.
For sure. That's awesome. So I guess with that, and still want to stay on this topic for right now, but I know you're a very goal oriented person. And so I'm curious, as you go about, the current situation, how are you going about prioritizing and setting those types of goals? Like, I know you're going to conferences. I know that you're on the job search, you've got your own business, but how do you prioritize and handle all that? Because I know that there's some folks who are tuning in, who are in similar situations or trying to figure out how they navigate trying to manage all of this. So I'm curious, how do you prioritize these types of things?
Yeah, I mean, I do have competing priorities. I'm not going to lie. Like, I want to get a job, and I also want to continue to grow my little business, because that's something that I hope that can take me through to retirement. So I don't want to just, I want to take it as seriously as I can, and I feel like it's a really, interesting space to be in, to be a speaker right now, and to be providing a point of view on DEI from the perspective of a Latina and a woman of color. So I want to seize that opportunity. So there are some competing priorities. And I also want to take care of myself. Like, I want to be well. I can't be like falling apart, or just like, so I want to be like, have good energy level. I want to like be positive. I want to, be present, for these interviews. I want to like present my best self. So all of those are priorities right now. And I kind of try to be like super intentional, and I document. I'm like a list person. So I like just document stuff that I know I want to be doing. And I try to like prioritize. So I know, like, if, I want to go to a conference and there's like an opportunity to work with the client, and there's an opportunity to go to Miami with my friends, well, I got to pick like what is the like optimum way for me to spend my time. And I will tell you that uh, and Mike, I don't know if you know, but I just spent about a month in Puerto Rico. So there is a time and a place for all these things. And I did take time to take care of myself. I went to Puerto Rico. I came up with that plan. I would say within days of getting laid off, I decided that I was going to go to Puerto Rico and spend time with my family. I bought a one-way ticket. So I was like, I'm just going to go. I don't know when I'm going to come back. I had an idea, but I wanted to give myself a little, I felt like a little bit of freedom when I got laid off, and I wanted to lean into that freedom. And I'm like, I'm party of one. I can make my own choices now. I don't have people looking over my shoulder or telling me how I need to act or walk through this situation. I get to pick for myself how I want to act and be in this situation. And I picked that I wanted to go to a wellness retreat and be with family, and, really focus on my health and my wellness to kind of kick off this time in my life. And I feel like that was a very good investment of money and time, because it paid off. Like, I'm in a really good place, but I needed that space and time to do that, to take care of myself, and to be around other people and focus on something. Like, I wasn't just like solely focused on work. I was like enjoying Puerto Rico, the vibe. I went to like a show. My cousin and I would cook together. I went out with my aunt to the mall, and we would just walk around and have lunch and drink coffee and, just enjoy. And all of that, I think, has helped me to get in a good mindset and like to be in a good place so that I could approach, the hard work of looking for work and expanding my network and all of that. I could approach it from a better place because I was like, my cup was full and my battery was charged. So, and I'm glad I trusted myself. I think I do feel like, you know, need to get to a place where you could trust yourself to make a decision like that, because that was not like the logical choice. Like, people were like scrambling and frantic, and I knew my friends were some of my friends that were also laid off were in a very dark place. And, your first inclination is not necessarily to go and spend money, is like to kind of like keep the money, but like I was like, no, I need to go take care of me. I don't know how long this is going to last, and I need to make sure I am well. And so I am glad that I trusted myself, and I'm glad that I have people in my life to offer me that kind of support. I'm very blessed in that way.
I appreciate you for sharing, the aspect of taking care of yourself, because as a counselor myself, oftentimes I preach the importance of taking care of yourself, but understanding when you need to take a step back to actually perform those activities. And so, shout out to you for being able to be aware of that, because not everybody is aware of that and are aware of their body saying, "Okay, we need a break. Okay, we need to be around family. This is what I need in order to feel
Yes.
recharged." So I want to say, one, congratulations for you listening to your body, but two, I appreciate you for being vulnerable and sharing your authenticity on our show today, because for me that is something that I struggle with sometimes, especially on a public platform as this. And so I just want to say thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, I keep it real. I don't
Yes,
even know
I
any other
love
way to
that.
be.
I love that. I love that.
It gets me in trouble a lot, Mike, but obviously in a show like this, it's a good thing.
And sometimes trouble is not all trouble is not bad
Listen,
trouble.
that's right.
All
Good.
trouble is not
There's good trouble, and
Yes,
I like
there
to get in
is.
good trouble.
So from your experience, can you talk to us about what sparked your passion for equality, and how did you turn into like a full-time job? And I know that you mentioned you're doing some work in your business. You said small business, but we're gonna call that a big business because we're gonna put that out there for you. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say equality has always played a role in my life as a woman of color, as a Latina, as someone who, I when I graduated from college, I went to work for one of, I think it was at the time, the big six consulting companies. I worked for Accenture. At the time, it was Anderson Consulting, and I was definitely one of the few women of color in that space. And so I do feel like my lived experience has a lot to do with why this is an important topic for me. Um, Having joined the workforce, I was, I don't want to say how long ago, but anyway, it was a long time ago that I joined the
Mm.
workforce, over 25 years ago. And I experienced a lot of bias, a lot of microaggressions. At the time, there wasn't like a good vocabulary or good like common language for us to say like, what was that? Like, I know I felt something like funny, or I felt a
Mhm.
little like weird after that conversation, but I didn't have like a good language or terms to use to say like why that particular conversation maybe made me feel uncomfortable, or something that someone said just didn't feel right, or that type thing. And I feel like I walked for a long time, maybe a good 20 years of my career, not having that language or ways to describe when I was experiencing either a microaggression, or I would say on the wrong end of a bias. But I feel that, having had those experiences, seeing things that are unfair or unjust, or having experienced them for myself, I don't want that for future generations. I want future generations of women and women of color and people of color, communities of color, and other underrepresented people to have a more equitable experience. I want to use any power and influence that I have to make the workplace better for people, to make it easier for people to navigate and succeed and thrive. I will use whatever I can, any influence I can, to make people feel more welcome and included. So it's my lived experience that I think drives me the most. And yeah, and I would say that, it's not like I didn't mention this in like, or I don't know if it came up in the intro. I can't even remember in my illustrious career if we talked about me being a missioner, but I was a missioner for 2 years, and I lived and worked in South America with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. I was in jail a couple times a week with these women. Um, and I say that because my heart has always been in like social justice and in like trying to create a more equitable and just world. And so it's not like that I started caring about it recently, or that like now it's trending, so it's like, oh, that's a nice thing. And maybe that's okay if that's what it is. Like I'm not, I guess I won't even say that that's a bad thing if you are just learning about DEI and you're like, wow, that sounds cool, I want to be part of it. That's dope. Good for you. But it is not a new thing to me. And it is something that, I worked at a school. I worked in a very, very poor and underserved community in the South Bronx. So my passion for social justice and equality, and inclusion, and making things better for other people, it runs deep. It's a very deep passion that I have. And anyway, so that's kind of how I ended up in this space, and I'm really glad that I'm here now.
So I can personally relate to that. So I have a question for you. So, not oftentimes do we find many people who have the wisdom, the knowledge, the power, the bravery that you have to be able to do the work that you do. So I wonder, throughout your journey, your 25 years of experience, at some point did you feel alone or feel like you were doing the work by yourself?
Almost every day.
Talk to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is very hard work. DEI work is
Mm.
not for people who give up easily, or who are get shook, by difficult conversations, because the work is very hard. You will, there's going to be people that are going to be questioning your goals and your strategies and your methods. There will be times where even people that are on your team are going to like feel like they're not on your team. Like it feels like, are we trying to do the same thing? Because it doesn't feel like it sometimes. I feel like I have to justify very often, like, why I feel like a certain action or initiative is important. There are going to be people who gaslight you. There are going to be people who are very fearful of what you're trying to do, and they're going to either consciously or unconsciously get in your way. They're going to create barriers. They're going to create obstacles. And sometimes, like you don't even see the progress. The progress is very slow. This is not work that like you're like, oh, I did it now, like 50% representation. It's like, oh my goodness, we got 0.1%, and we're like trying to celebrate that, and it's hard. So and sometimes it feels like you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, because there's like a lot of stuff happening, and a lot of competing priorities, and lots of groups looking for attention and saying, do me next. It's our turn now. And so like it is a lot of work, and it does often feel like lonely, or like you don't really have a lot of people on your side. And all I can say is that I think DEI practitioners, we do a pretty good job of sticking together. I think it is a field that I have observed more than lots of other fields that I've been in, where people really do share resources and come together. And it's like people aren't like being like, oh no, that's how we do it, but I'm not going to tell you how we do it. It's a secret, or it's like we're not sharing. People share because the truth is, even if you and I do the same exact thing, if we're in different companies and there's different leaders and there's different approaches and business objectives, how that ends up showing up and looking is going to be very different. So there should be no fear about sharing your approach and strategies, because it only helps to move the entire movement up. And so, if we're truly about that, then we should be really supporting each other. So I have found that to be the case.
Thank you so much for sharing. So what word of advice, and reason why I'm asking this right now, because I think it would be helpful for someone who is doing the work similar to you and myself and Gandhi. So what word of advice would you give someone who is doing DEI work or who are doing advocacy work, but they feel like every time they do one good thing, they are knocked like 1,000 steps backwards? So what word of encouragement or advice would you give them in order for them to continue to do and fight the fight that they're fighting?
Yeah, I would say if what you're trying to do is grounded in data, like you know that this thing is really needed, and you believe in the approach that you're taking to try and, change or make an impact, I would say then, move forward and believe in yourself, and, address any obstacles that come up. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. I would say, we need accomplices in this work. It is never the job of one person to be trying to fight this fight on their own. We need co-conspirators, co-collaborators to be partnering with us. And sometimes it feels like you're in a bad place. I'll give you an example. I was doing this reverse mentoring program at work, and supposedly someone had a conversation with someone that was involved in the program, and that individual shared that I was pushing them too hard. That was what that individual shared. And the person, the third person, came to me and said, just so you know, this person said you're pushing them too hard. And I was like, oh crap, like this is not good, like, meaning like it was kind of good because I was getting to them, but it wasn't good because they were feeling some type of way about it. And I'm like, do I need to, like, I guess pull back a little bit? I wasn't really sure what to do, so I was like, got a little nervous. So I went to, I consulted with some of my DEI co-conspirators, and I was like, this is what I heard, what should I do? And I never forget, my one friend, he is a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and he is someone that I used to work with doing this very type of work. And he said, Hady, you got to keep going, keep your foot on the gas. Like, now is the time, because you're getting to them. This person is feeling it, is feeling this. You're holding them accountable and they're feeling it. You need to push through this. It's going to be scary for you. It's going to be scary for them, but the outcome will be good. And so that's what I did. And it ended up having a very good outcome. I didn't get fired.
No, that's amazing. I think one of the all too often, like, especially when we're in positions, like, because I know all three of us are actively involved in making sure that whatever environments that we're in, that we're pushing the needle. But I think all too often it's tough. It's tough, especially when you're trying to get an entire group bought into trying to make change. And like you were kind of saying, all too often you're like, I'm the only one. Like, am I going to be the person who's let go? Like, I don't want to be the person to, speak up. But kind of in addition to what you were saying, you mentioned that we need folks who are not only going to hold us accountable, but we also need folks who are going to be bought into the process, who traditionally may not look like us. And so I'm curious, from your experience, as you start thinking about getting that active buy-in, sometimes you may stumble, sometimes you get folks who are brought in. So I'm wondering, what strategies have you used as you've navigated this process to ensure that, hey, as we are making change, that one, folks are getting bought in, but two, when it comes to folks who may be more in a position of leadership, how have you gotten them into this as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think a couple things. One is, I mentioned this earlier, but I do really feel like be grounded in data. That's very important. Like, it's very hard to fight data. Like, if we have 10% of this or 2% of that and 3% of this other thing, like that's a very hard thing to, like, for people to debate or have like a difference of opinion on. So I do feel like that has helped me a lot to be grounded in data, and also know that data is more than just numbers. So there's a lot of stories and narratives out there to be listening to and to observe. And so if I do feel, if you look and ask and listen, you get answers to lots of questions. And I think that does help you to figure out, like, where you need to go and kind of like what some of your goals should be. Then once you kind of are in a good position of you have good data that supports kind of where you want to go and you have some good ideas, then I do think you're right. You do need to pitch these ideas. You need to get some co-conspirators on board. Sometimes it's people that don't look like you. Sometimes their mindset. See, I will say this, and I think this is an important part of what makes me me and what makes some other people well, anyway, let me tell you what I think is an important part of what makes me me. I start off with the belief that women and people of color and other underrepresented groups have what it takes to be like amazing managers, fantastic leaders, successful individual contributors. That is my mindset. I believe that out of the gate. Nobody has to convince me of that. But I do feel that not everyone starts off with that belief. And so oftentimes I'm finding myself starting at that very point. That's where I begin. It's just understanding why someone would feel that maybe, there isn't a need to do DEI, or there are reasons why, women are not, represented in senior levels. Oh, it's because, like some people believe that women don't have the skills. Like they really do. They believe that, or they really believe that women are inferior in some way to men, or more less inclined to do a good job, say in sales or engineering or something like that. They really believe that. And so you got to deal with that belief. You have to challenge those beliefs. And that's a lot of where the real work starts, is removing those kind of barriers, because we're never going to achieve our goals with people on our team that would have that type of mindset. So I think it's very, very important to start there, to understand what you're working with, to understand the beliefs and biases that people hold, and try to like work through them to the best of your ability, so that we all are on the same page. That like, hey, this is an issue. There's no reason why this should be an issue. So let's remove whatever barriers are preventing us from achieving a goal that we want to achieve in regard to this. But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
For me, it makes perfect sense because, oftentimes we have those conversations. Sometimes we have to unlearn what we know in order to help ourselves. And so in return, we are able to help other people, because I personally don't feel like you can help someone if you are in a position, in a place where I'm not going to say you're stagnant, but you're in a dark place where you're not able to kind of bring yourself out to help other people. Because at some point you got to show that there's something better, but it's going to be a process that you have to go through in order to get to that better. And sometimes that process is not going to be designed how you want it to be designed, but at the same time, it's going to be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sorry, Mike,
No,
I don't
go
want to
ahead,
cut you
Andy.
off.
No, go ahead.
I think with that, and you both brought up a good point. Like, this is not an overnight process. And one of the things that has been very important to me, especially looking at the landscape of not only just the workforce, but the next generation of leaders, politicians, educators, this topic and the idea that diversity is important, to me, has to be introduced way earlier than, at the point it's like, hey, I'm just starting my career, I'm just starting my workforce, or I'm just entering the workforce. So I guess my question, and I would love for it to be an open discussion around, how important is it that when we start looking at education, that this is integrated into the curriculums, whether it's college, high school, middle school, elementary school, to ensure that when this next generation of folks do move into the positions that we're currently in, that the needle continues to move forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I do feel like companies have a lot of power and influence in this regard and can play a big role. They have money, they have foundations, they have community service programs that their employees get involved with. Many companies have talent pipeline programs for underrepresented communities. These all represent opportunities for, important DEI touch points to talk about not only the value of belonging, to talk about the value of a diverse talent pipeline, but to also address some of these issues that people have around a sense of belonging. So to talk about topics that I think are going to be to your point, future workers and leaders, they need to have a good understanding of DEI and the impact of DEI long before they walk through the door of any particular company. And the reason for that is because to the degree that they have this knowledge, whether they come from an underrepresented group or not, they're going to understand how to navigate the waters and have a better chance of either thriving or helping others to thrive, to the degree that they understand like what their role is. So I know like Josh and I, I was part of, and he continues to be part of an ERG at Salesforce. And I know that we worked together on one project last year where we were working with a local boot camp, and this boot camp was made up of mostly, if I'm remembering correctly, Black and brown students. These were people that were trying to pivot into tech. If I'm remembering correctly, a lot of them did not have like college experience. I don't remember all the details, but that's my recollection. The point is that we were talking about specifically, we were talking about Salesforce as a company. We were talking about like different opportunities and like what's our role, and you could be an engineer, and you can be like in marketing, and you could be a product person, and all these things. But we also talked about what's it like to be a Latina in tech, or what's it like to be a Black man in tech, or what's it like to be an underrepresented person in tech, and how that has influenced our career. And also like giving them a sense that like there is a way, even in spite of some of the fact that we might be underrepresented, there's still a way for us to enter a space like tech, which is a place where we're very underrepresented, and also to succeed. Like we gave them solid examples of people that were thriving. And we had lots of people. I don't know if you remember, Josh, but we had a lot of people that wanted to be part of that panel. So there's a lot of us that want to share our stories, and they kind of gobbled it up and asked lots of questions. And I felt like that was like a really good example of us not being transparent. I would say not like trying to cover up and be like, oh, it's great, and it's like, well, it wasn't always easy, but there's ways to navigate, and here are some ways that you can do that. And a lot of that has to do with like advocating for yourself and being very proactive, not waiting for like people to like tap you on the shoulder and be like, you're great and you work hard, so we're going to promote you. It's like, no, like that doesn't really happen. Like you need to be promoting yourself, and you need to figure out how you're going to get yourself in a situation to, be in a special project, or have, an amazing opportunity. And so I think, we should be transparent that sometimes that is difficult, in particular for some underrepresented groups. And there's still ways to get around that and to be successful.
Absolutely. And I will add to what you were saying. I think the other thing too is it's also important that folks see and hear and look from folks that look like them in the space, because to your point, whether it's technology, whether you're doing education, like Mike, how many times have we talked about where you're like one of one? And, it's important that when you are in these positions that not only are you giving back, but you're also letting people know that like, hey, we're here because we want to see you either with us or in the space.
Mhm.
And, I know all too often, many of us have walked in the room where we are one of one, or we have entered in this case, we've been in technology, and it's like, you're looking around, you're like, well, wait a minute, hold up. So, as we start thinking about how we move the needle, like this is a prime example of that.
I wanted to give you a quick example of something that happened to me that is kind of related to this. On LinkedIn, I got approached by someone who works for like, I'll say the Department of Ed, like, New York City Department of Education. I don't remember the exact group, but she was part of a task force that involved like teachers, basically, and other staff members. And she invited me to be part of a panel. And I wasn't the only one. The other panelists were also underrepresented women in tech. And we were telling the teachers and the staff people what it was like to be an underrepresented woman in tech, so that they could understand a little bit more and try to include that in the education to the children. So in other words, us sharing our experiences, our firsthand experiences, was going to help them to better prepare the children. And so that was pretty cool. I like working directly with children. I do like children in that regard, and like, connecting with them. But I thought that was important too, because PS, most of these teachers were not people of color or underrepresented themselves. So they are aware that there's these micro inequities or biases or things happening, but they don't necessarily know what it looks like or how it shows up or how we navigate. And it was really cool that we got a chance to share our firsthand experience so that they could share that with the students that they work with.
And I like to piggyback off that, because as an educator firsthand, I do oftentimes see what you're saying. And so, and it takes courage and it takes bravery to have those courageous conversations to help staff members understand, like, okay, you may know this student on the outside and what they may display and what they bring to the table every single day. However, you got to get beyond and move beyond the surface to understand where they're coming from, the complex things that they're bringing to the classroom environment in order to set them up for success. Because sometimes we have like a one size fits all mindset, and that's not necessarily an approach that's going to help people to be able to transition to where they want to go, but also bring the determination, the grit, and everything else that they need in order to sustain those positions. Because as a Black male, there's only 2% of us in education, and every single day, I have to advocate for not only the kids but also myself. And so I appreciate you for bringing that up, which leads me into this question where, I understand that true diversity, and I understand that we have to do more training as it relates to training educators and kind of closing that gap. But I wonder, what are some of the biggest gaps and concerns between diversity, access, but also understanding where we are as a nation as it relates to a cultural gap, where you having generations of kids losing touch of what their roots are? What are some, in your professional opinion, what advice and or what viewpoints do you have towards that particular topic?
Ooh, I don't know if I know the answer to this question.
And that was a lot. That was a lot. So if you need me,
no, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and give it a whirl. But one of the things that I do a lot of mentoring, a ton of mentoring and coaching to a lot of people. And I will tell you that this is an interesting data point. I have put it on LinkedIn. It's not there anymore. Or maybe it is still there. I don't even remember. But I did this a couple years ago, and I'm like, if you're stuck or you're, early on in your career and you need some advice, feel free to hit me up. And I would devote like my Friday afternoons to meeting with random people. And over the years, I've met with probably hundreds of people, but most of them have been women of color. If I'm honest, most of them have been women of color. Most of them have been Latinas that have reached out to me. And not all of them, they may not all speak Spanish. They may not be cooking Spanish food or dancing salsa on the weekends, but they know what it's like to be a Latina, and they know what it's like to be a Latina trying to go up the corporate ladder. Because the truth is that the people that hold biases against us, they don't know our personal private business or what we believe or don't believe. They just see, to your point, what's on the surface, and they're like, oh, there goes another one. And she or he, they're probably not, they don't have the skill set for this, or they're not cut out for this, or they're probably not polished enough, or they don't have that presence that we're looking for. And so I do feel like mentoring and coaching the younger generation is a very important part of our responsibility as people that are in this space and that have lived and live to tell about it, live to tell about our experiences. I do feel like reaching back in that regard is very important. I'm part of a program right now called Hack Diversity, and I am mentoring a younger, someone who's in college right now that is trying to break into tech. and she's Latina. And yeah, we talk about a lot of different topics. I think the imposter syndrome comes up a ton, you know, because you just we have our own issues from our own, in the case of Latinas, we have some of our own narratives that we need to get rid of and eliminate before we can, you know, show up the way we're supposed to show up in some spaces. So like, that's not even things that people are putting on us. That's stuff we're bringing some of our own baggage, if you will, in terms of like our roles and how we show up. And like, you know, there's a saying in Spanish, everyone knows it, calladita te ves más bonita. And it's like a very common phrase that a lot of people refer to when they talk about like things we need to dismiss, because calladita te ves más bonita is like, you look prettier when you're quiet, which is, and it's a feminine, it is referring to a feminine, a woman, a person, you know, someone who identifies as a woman. That's who it's targeted to. And so we need to get rid of those mindsets and that are very limiting, so that we can, you know, so like when I work with my mentees, lots of times they're struggling with that part, with just the imposter syndrome. And like, I feel like people don't care what I think. I'm afraid to speak up. I feel like when I do speak up, people shut me down. I'm afraid to disagree. I'm not sure if I'm right. I'm the only one there. So it's very uncomfortable for me to speak up. So all those things, we need to be eliminating all of that. You know, and then we're dealing with things that people put on us, and we have to kind of struggle and work through that. And then we can like really show up the way in our full selves and in our full, you know, potential. But gosh, I don't know if that answers your question, Mike, but that's what came up for me when I heard your question.
It does, and I wonder if you can shine light, because for example, in my profession, I see on a daily basis where I try to take time out to create teachable moments for the youth, and what I'm learning is some of them don't even care, right? They don't even care to be taught that information. And so, you know, for me, I have the mindset, okay, I'm an adult here. So how can I, you know, facilitate a way to be able to connect with them, or find ways for them to make it interesting, or a way for them to digest it, right? And so having to understand it, and I'm just one person trying to find thousands of ways for young people to understand their history and where they come from, the importance of valuing it, so we don't end up making the same mistakes. So how would you encourage someone from your experience? I know the mentorship is important, but I think educators, we are in a position where we are doing these things. But at the end of the day, it's just like, you have social media that we're up against. You have the parents who may not necessarily agree. Then you got Gen Z, where they just here, there, everywhere, and they really don't care about anything. And then you have the millennials that are trying to do the work. And so there's a whole bunch of concoction that's been stirred up, right? And so like, how would you go about navigating that from your experience? And I understand the importance of mentorship programs and things of the sort, but when you're looking from like more so like rural and also in your red states, what advice will you give other people?
I don't know. It's not, I think it's not easy. You know, I've been blessed and fortunate enough that I've almost always lived in a place where a lot of people around me agreed with me, you know, so, or had similar values. I would say that, you know, when I think back to the experience that I had working at a school, I was not a teacher. So let's back up. I worked at an elementary school in the South Bronx for 3 years, but I was not an educator. I was not a teacher. I was a community school director. And my job was really to support the families and the children. And, you know, I think a lot of it, you know, when I think back to the elementary school, because those children were very young, and a lot of how they were or how they showed up had to do with their parents and their home life. So I spent a lot of time with their families, with the moms and the dads and grandmas and aunts and people that were like the adults in their life, making sure that they felt seen, heard, supported, that they were empowered to make decisions for their families, that, you know, like lots of times, you know, I'm guessing you, Mike, in particular, you might have experienced this, where you're like, I know, like, this is what's best for you, or this is what's best for your child, but like, they have to arrive at that decision on their own.
Right.
That is not something you can impose on anybody. You have to just be there to support them and provide them with information so they could come up with the best decisions for their families. I do know that, I firmly believe that parents want the best for their children. That is truly
Hmm.
at the heart, like that sincerely and genuinely, they want what's best for their children. And so I do feel like if you lean on that part of it, knowing that they want what's best for their kids, and support parents so that they feel like they have what they need to, have their basic needs met. Cause that was in my case where I was at the school, some parents didn't, and families did not have their basic needs met. So we focus on some of those things so that they could get to the point where they could be encouraging their children to maybe support, I'm sorry, they could encourage their children to maybe like you should be a coder. Like a lot of people like games, the children like playing games and they like the idea of social media. It's like, okay, well, maybe you should pursue a career in tech, but these were little kids. They were children between the ages of like 5 and 10. But supporting the parents and giving the parents, I guess, yeah, like that extra, all of the things that they needed is what I think helps the children to be set up for success. There's a big correlation there.
I 100% agree, and I want to make this right so that by the time they get to the workforce, they are able to have a sense of a foundation, and that way, the employer who we know are not going to take the time to create those opportunities for them to participate in onboarding, because as we understand AI and adding that interface to it, a lot of the actual traditional ways of learning are, in a sense, I guess it's transitioning to a more digital model where it's not necessarily creating that human interface, which is what some of our students still need in order to be able to understand the why behind things.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for sure.
I would like to add though, and I guess speaking of opportunity, and you kind of already hinted at this earlier on, but how do we make sure that these communities of color aren't left behind? And Mike just mentioned, like, we have AI, we have, we're moving to more like digital resources. We're trying to ensure that we're paving a way for the next group of folks, but like, with all the things that are going on in the world, what can we do to ensure that as these young kids are growing up, that this next wave it's not just one-sided. It's, we've got everybody in the mix, everybody's learning, we've got resource sharing and so forth. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you have to make a difference wherever you find yourself, and there's like lots of opportunities. Like if I think about like, in a role that I had in my most previous role, I supported a lot of the ERGs, those employee resource groups, and employee resource groups they're a very important part of making sure that communities of color stay relevant. They have a big influence in terms of how companies invest in these communities, how they partner with them, and how they expand their relationships with them. So I do feel like that's one example, but like wherever you find yourself, like you could be a nonprofit, you could be in education, you could be in the DEI space, you could be like, I like the VC firms that are investing in like communities of color and like founders of color. Like that is like, I love that. I love to see that. I'm like, I wish there was a way for me to get into that space, because that's us believing in us. And I feel like more than ever in my lifetime, I feel like we're not waiting for people to give us things. We're not waiting for people to invite us to the table. We're like, you know what?
That part,
Yeah,
yes,
we're like, hello, okay,
yes.
we're just gonna take things over here. We're just gonna
Yes.
create what it is that we need and what's gonna serve us and what is gonna help us to shine a light on our communities and the great things that they're doing. So I feel like you could be in talent acquisition, you could be running programs, you could be the CEO of a nonprofit, you could be developing DEI strategies as a practitioner. But like whatever you're doing, shining a light on us, and you have the ability to make sure that we're accounted for and that we're not left behind. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I think my career is a good example where I did lots of very different things, but no matter what, like I found ways to, even if it was as an ERG member, I found ways to continue to make sure that our communities were accounted for. And whenever I saw space or an opportunity, I like pushed the envelope a little bit harder, and I was like, okay, let me push a little bit more, because I feel like there's an opportunity here. But you got to be brave. You got to be brave. You got to be bold. And you cannot wait to be invited. There's just that's canceled. Waiting to be invited is canceled. You need to be like stepping up and saying like, I am, I see an opportunity here. And how are we going to go about and do that? There's so many of us that can put our heads together and do amazing things. It's, there's no excuse for us not to be doing it.
I 100% agree. And I appreciate you for saying that's cancel, because, we live in a cancel culture where you can do one wrong thing and you'll be canceled for whatever reason. But I was just talking about this with some of my colleagues the other day. And we were just saying how we have to move away from, and wasn't even education related, but we have to move away from waiting for permission. We are free. We have to understand that we are free so that we are able to move to what we would like to see for our future generations and the generations to come. But if we continue to allow other people like education, corporate America, nonprofit to come up with missions that are oftentimes vague, and oftentimes they have good intentions, but the impact is 100% completely not effective. And so I appreciate you for mentioning that, because for me, that is the message that we like to share on our platform. I'm not necessarily saying if you need help, don't ask for it, but understanding that you have the power within you to make whatever you want to make happen.
Yeah,
And that, go ahead.
For sure. I was just going to say, and the truth is that, I see a lot of companies and foundations out there creating like either programs or scholarships, or like there's competitions to like earn money, make money, win this, and they'll like help subsidize some of the work that we're trying to do. So I think there are some co-conspirators out there, and the help, listen, we're not going to get there completely on our own. I think it's very appropriate to take advantage of any resources that are available, that are out there, to help us make progress even sooner or even more quickly. So, I know there's companies out there that are investing in startups, in, different types of organizations, are putting money out there. Like, I know I'm part of Latinas in Tech, and they have this contest going on right now where like, I think people are competing for like $60,000 awards for their startups. And it's like, they're really trying to get people to like, there's no excuse. Like if you're thinking about it, do it. And there are organizations out there that are there to support us and to help us, advance our causes even more quickly.
How could we get plugged in with some of those organizations, and not only our platform, but how can our audience get plugged in? Because I know you're very involved, like with Room to Grow and other organizations, but how can our audience be a support to you, but also support to the organizations that you are supporting to do the work of equity?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, I like working with children and families, especially single mothers. That's like my cause. Those are the things that appeal to me. And with Room to Grow and Pan Peru, I get to do that. That's exactly what both of those organizations are doing, are really working with families and young children, and really like creating a future that is like positive and full of like, opportunity for young people. So I feel like everyone needs to kind of find out what they feel passionate and what, kind of, I don't know, drives them or makes them, feel excited. And then you should find an organization to support, get involved. Like I told you, I'm a Hack Diversity mentor. I only found out about them this year, but I'm like, that is completely aligned with me, my brand, what I'm interested and excited about. Like, it's a non-brainer that I would be part of that. So you need to kind of figure out what is it that makes you tick and what is it that gets you excited and makes you feel passionate. And then you need to do the research and get involved. I made it a goal several years ago to be part of a board of a couple organizations. I felt it was like that time in my career to do that, because then you could play even a stronger role. You're helping an organization raise money. You're helping dictate a little bit of like the strategies and like how the future of that organization looks like. In my case, I helped start the Equity Council for Room to Grow for their staff members. So I was like the co-chair of their Equity Council for the first year. And that is very fulfilling for me, because I'm getting to work with an organization whose mission I'm aligned with. And I also get to apply the things that are important to me, which is social justice, equity, and the advancement of inclusion and belonging. So you need to know what you stand for. And then you need to go find the organizations that are doing the things you stand for. And then you just need to raise your hand and be like, hi, can I help? How can I help? How can I get involved? I want to be part of this. And, and then just balance your time well, so you don't overextend yourself.
It reminds me of something I say is live through your reflection instead of someone else's shadow. That is extremely important of finding what you like to do, what you want to be involved in, and then that's how you continue to push other generations to come to do the same exact thing. Thank you.
So Hady, one of the things that we talked on a number of different things today, but as we kind of wrap things up, one of the things that we want to ask you is for folks who are either interested in getting in the space or are interested in making change in their community, or, really even just making change for themselves. What is the biggest advice that you would like to leave for our audience today as they continue to move forward on their journey?
Yeah, I don't think it can be just one single thing. So I'm going to mention a couple things, but I think first of all, you really need to be brave. I think I've mentioned the word courage or we've talked about bravery a couple times in this conversation. Like, you just can't be afraid of your own light, afraid of shining your light on important things, afraid of speaking out when you need to, afraid to do the right thing. So you can't be afraid. It does take a fair amount of courage to live this kind of life where you're really showing up for other people. So you need to be brave, you need to be bold, you need to speak up, and you need to believe and have like a deep passion and belief for the things that you're advocating for. Like, if it's like, like I like the climate. I don't want to leave this podcast for people to think that I don't like the climate, but it's not like I do recycle, but it's not like everything can be your thing. So you need to pick the things, we just talked about this. You need to pick the things that really speak to you. And so I would say, know that part. And also know that, hard work is not enough. You're going to need to be proactive about letting others know the things that you've been up to and how well you've done them, and toot your own horn. And that part is very important in order to be successful. And also, I wrote a blog post about this, but I will share here that you need to use your words to ask for help, to get support, to talk about things that are important. Your words are very important. You'd be surprised how much how far a conversation can take you if you have an honest and genuine conversation with someone to ask for something that you need, or some support that you're looking for, how far that can go. And then put yourself out there, take risks. And I think that, when you do that, you will see a return on the investment. And investment in, speaking of investments, I would say invest in yourself in many ways, but like get a career coach if you need one, hire someone to redo your resume if that's what's needed in your life.
Yes.
Go on a retreat,
Yes.
feel better, get a massage, whatever it is, but invest in yourself, and you will see, I firmly believe you will see some return on that investment.
Thank you so much for mentioning a coach, because, oftentimes we, as people of color, we don't necessarily think about that particular aspect. We think about mentors, and we want to follow their footsteps, but we don't think about coaches and all that they can offer us, and being able to allow us to work and live from our essence in order to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. So I appreciate you for sharing that, and investing in yourself is extremely important.
1,000%. I've done it 3 times so far, and I'm sure I'll be doing it some more.
There we go. So Hady, as first off, we really appreciate you being on the show today. You dropped a lot of the gems here on the show. For the folks who want to get connected with you, because I know that you've got a lot of stuff going on, both with your business as well as a lot of the communities that you serve. But if folks want to get in contact with you, reach out to you, follow you, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn and I'm pretty active on the platform. I try to post several times a week, so I would definitely love to have your audience members follow me there, connect with me there. I like scheduling one-on-ones with people, so we could do virtual cafecitos if you're interested in talking some more. But yeah, that's I would say first and foremost where you can find me. If you happen to be a fan of street art, and I know not everyone is, but if you happen to be a fan of street art, then I think you could also follow me on Instagram. That my handle is Hady on the web, and I post there probably a couple times a week as well. And yeah, I travel. Whenever I travel, I do take pictures of street art. So you know, in my feed, there's stuff from like Italy and Portugal and California and Miami and just other places that I've been. So it just won't be New York street art, but there's a lot of New York street art as well.
All right. Well, there we have it. Again, Hady, we really appreciate you being on the show today. And for our audience, I mean, there were a lot of key takeaways, but as we look back at this conversation, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, but also don't be afraid to advocate for the things that are important to you and are going to make change, not only just in the community that you serve, but the communities that are going to continue to connect, touch, and react to the things that you are actively involved in. And I will say, as you mentioned, Hady, on this episode today, we have a seat at the table, and don't be afraid to feel that you can't walk in the room and you can't get that seat, because that is important, especially as we continue to make change and grow our community. And so for the folks, our audience, again, we appreciate you tuning in. And as we always say, it's the power of a growth mindset, and it always starts with you.